Good evening, good evening, good evening. Thank you everyone for coming. We are going to get started here, so please find an open seat if we have any. What a wonderful turnout. Thank you. I'm going to hand the mic over here to Jean, our friend from the library, who's going to do a quick introduction, and then we'll get on with your regularly scheduled programming.
Hi everybody, I'm Jean Valley. I'm the head therapist, and I'm so glad to have Geoff with us here tonight and to see all of you. This is really wonderful. So I want to welcome you, and I want to thank the Friends of the Milton Public Library for their support of our events. Now let me tell you about Professor Wilkinson and about his new book called Confluence. In addition to being a poet and an author, Geoff is a professor at Boston University School of Social Work and a lifelong activist whose career has included community organizing, directing the Mass Senior Action Council and Mass Public Health Association, and serving as Director of Planning and Policy for the State Health Department. His new book, Confluence, will be shared with you this evening in a poetry celebration. Poetry Month was actually in April, just so you know. And this title was published on April 15th by Lost Valley Press. And we have the artist here, I understand. The creative artist, and I have one review quote to share with you before we start, and it's from Shani Stepakoff, winner of the Independent Book Publishers Association, the 2022 Benjamin Franklin Gold Award for Poetry. And she says, in these finely crafted, potent poems, Geoff Wilkinson gives us new ways to look at ourselves and others. His main theme is connection to self, to the beloved, to friends, to nature, to the wider community, to ancestors, and to future generations. Please join me in a warm welcome for tonight's speaker.
Thank you very much, Jean. Thank you to the Friends of the Milton Public Library. Mostly thank you to all of you for being here. This is just a remarkable turnout, and there are a number of you here who I did not know were coming, so I am very moved and very touched. One of the people who I didn't know was coming was the self-appointed Master of Ceremonies, Daniel Wilkinson, my son. Dan flew in from Pittsburgh this afternoon, and I didn't know he was coming. And I was upstairs in my office, and I heard footsteps on the stairs, and I figured it was Sally, my wife, who was sitting next to Dan. And he popped his head in the office and said, "Hi, Dad." And I just was overcome with emotion. And I'm overcome to see so many of you here, and many of us go back many years. If we haven't met, thank you very much for coming and sharing this evening with us. I'm going to just turn off the music. There aren't many slides, but I'm going to show one later on. So I want to thank Robert for selling the books. Thank you for buying the books. And I want to thank special thanks to Sally. We celebrated our 42nd wedding anniversary about a week ago. She inspired a lot of these poems. My son, Stephen, our younger one, who's teaching right now in the Milton Public Schools, and will come in later this evening, was scandalized by some of the poems. I am going to read one that I think is safe for an audience here, but Sally inspired a lot of the poems, and she helped choose and edit the poems in the book. She helped me with the selection for poems tonight, and she's more than a muse. The book wouldn't have happened without her, and it definitely would not have happened without A.J. Juarez, who you've been introduced to as the painter, but he is a friend of 20 years, a community organizer, software designer, remarkable painter, remarkable poet and musician, who I traded poems with over a number of years. And AJ is the publisher's agent for Lost Valley Press, which is an imprint of Satya House Publishing. And AJ contacted me in, I think in late 2020, maybe early 2021, and said, we want you to do a book. And I have not submitted poems for publication. I haven't done a lot of public reading. I've written and read for many years. But doing a book was not in my plans. And he insisted. And it's really become a mentor for me in owning my creative voice. So AJ, thank you so much. And thank you for coming. And Donna, thank you for coming. AJ's wife came out from Bellingham, Mass. Belchertown, I'm sorry, Belchertown.
What's up with you?
This is the first time I've seen the painting. This is the actual painting that is photographed for the cover of the book. And I'll say more about Confluence later on. So I guess with that, let me start reading. The way this is going to work is I'll read for about 15 minutes. We'll take a break for 10 or 15 minutes. You can purchase books. I'll sign books that I know several of you already bought them and didn't get a chance before we started up. So, and then I'll read for another 15 minutes. And by then, it'll be probably shortly after 8, and we'll have time for more book signing, refreshments, and conversation. So thank you again. There are a lot of, thank you. There are a lot of subjects of poems in this book. And I'm going to start us off with a poem called Birthday, which I wrote for my grandchildren, Daniel's children. And yeah, that's enough. Birthday. From salt and water we come. Primordial slime and blood offer testimony. We come from water and passion. We struggle forth to breathe of our own accord. We come from passion and hope, carried in our genes, gifts from our parents, from theirs and theirs and theirs before. We come from hope and starlight, shining through tears, through oceans, as the universe explodes. We come from starlight, from timeless love, to kick, to cry, to suck, to grip, even as this life we seek has its time. We come from love and courage to seek our meaning, to know and make our time. This next poem is for Sally. It's the one that I mentioned. I think I'm safe to read. There's a little bit of John Donne in this book, but not too much. Metronome. In the tangle of limbs under our covers, we were face to face as I awoke. A wisp of your hair fell curving between us across your cheek, forced right by your exhaled breath, or was it mine? It sprang back into place as you breathed in, or was it me? I held my breath to find out it was you, moving that metronome of silver gossamer back and forth in the sweet, warm musk we breathed together in borrowed moments, tender and precious as you slept. Daniel was a clarinetist and saxophonist at a high level in high school and college. His brother Stephen is a professional drummer and is teaching students right now as we are here in this room at Milton High School. This poem is for Stephen, but there's a reference to Dan in it. It's called Jazz Drummer. You did your duty 20 minutes at a time, making progress but missing the rhyme, while your brother escaped in orgies of notes, oblivious to the clock, until we dragged him smiling to the dinner table. How long did it take us to wake up and hear the music, trapped and leaking from tapping toes and drumming fingers, aching for release with 2 limbs wasted while you served hard time, carefully pressing keys your father longed to master? Now, there's nowhere on this green-blue planet where insects quiver and nations quake and bodies move for pleasure's sake, where you can't join souls with perfect strangers, sticks flying, limits dying, playing with time, soaring on wings of the universal tongue. Thank you. Sticking in the family. This is one for my mother. Mother's hands. Those are your grandmother's hands, Mother. Where did you find them? Thick blue veins raised like a delta river, winding through decades of family landscape. Those are your mother's hands, Mother. Where did they find you? Working like hers through the autumn years, steadily turned to the promise of spring. There are several poems in this book set in the Southwest, where I've had the fortune to do some hiking and travel. And there are a number of poems in this book that are built around stories of people that I've encountered. This is one of them. It's called Mustangs. I need help identifying the Mustangs among dozens of horses grazing as the sun settles behind Tuyana Mesa. 2 ranch hands in separate encounters give different information about the same 3 animals. These 2, says one, have some Mustang in them, but this one is the real thing. This one, says the other, is a poor excuse for a Mustang, but these 2 are the real deal. I trust him because the sun has leathered his neck and whiskered face, because of the blurred tattoos on his wiry forearm, because of the way he looks at me. He has sized me up, too. We share enough in common from our different worlds that when he tells me these 2 have never been ridden and probably never will be, we both know, we agree, that's the way it should be. And this is a poem from another travel, this to the northern part of the Gaspé Peninsula in Quebec, based on something that we witnessed, and then a little imagination thrown in. But this was a Saint-Anne-de-Mont in Quebec. Give us this day. They embrace on the pier at midnight, silhouetted in stern lights, resolute, fears packed tight as the gear in his duffel. The moon watches from behind careening clouds, unsentimental as the tossing charcoal sea. Witness to a final kiss, a reminder, a good luck wish, a promise he has no power to keep. The taillights of her pickup vanish into town as the boat recedes into ink and wind. A speck of light, hope and history balanced on an invisible horizon. And this from Maine, kind of following the style of Lucille Clifton. Blueberry pickers. Black bodies stoop in green fields under yellow sun where gulls soar and tides run. Black hands fly picking sweet berries for white tables with tennis courts and shingled gables. Black songs echo where green crabs crawl in gray mud and wine flows like precious blood. As you heard from Gene, I served at the State Department of Public Health, and I had a senior position in the commissioner's office. There's a provision of state law called 9C that allows the governor to unilaterally cut major sections of the budget if there's a projected deficit in the state budget. And I was unfortunately part of that process of making very dramatic cuts to state public health services in my role as senior policy advisor to the commissioner. This poem is called 9C. We plod through mud without getting dirty, butcher the meek without bloodying our hands, punching through glass without getting cut, sitting around our earnest table, dining on responsibility, cogs in a noble bureaucracy, flotsam on a current of villainous neglect, watching riches pour into coffers of greedy hands that opened the floodgates. Spreadsheets arrayed, powerless except by subtraction. We parry observations and clever propositions to achieve the unthinkable, choosing among targets for savings with deadly costs, minding turf and pecking orders, watching for cues, shuffling around, impressing one another, hiding ignorance, wincing over choices about other people's suffering, eliminating jobs while holding our own, wrestling with deadlines, recalculating bottom lines, rolling our eyes, shaking fortunate heads. We take stock momentarily of the big picture, the canvas of accumulated cuts, the power of multiplication. We peek into halls of screaming mirrors, slam close the doors, seek relief in gallows humor, agree on next steps for our trek across the Styx, delicate assignments, clandestine strategies to implement and mitigate. We do our best, then disperse like rings on a poisoned lake, rippling out through corridors and phone lines, sharing bad news with appropriate parties, hanging our heads in private, crying at our desks. This next poem is for a dear friend, departed friend, Don Meach, whose wife, Linda, is here with us tonight, our neighbor of 35 years, right across the street. Linda, thank you. Thank you for letting me do this. Don was a Vietnam veteran, and he was a fisherman. He could have caught a fish in a puddle of water. He used to load a barrel full of water balloons for Daniel's July birthday parties, and we'd hide them over at Don and Linda's garage, and then he'd wheel them over. The kids would disperse of them, wet themselves and us in the course of less than a minute. Dozens of them. It didn't matter how many we filled up. They could get rid of them immediately. Agent Orange. In vivid dreams, he returns from the dead, fortifying parties with his infectious smile, filling water balloons for laughing children. He drives jeeps for the general command, filling water balloons for laughing children, loads barrels of defoliant onto waiting planes. He casts perfectly above the rushing river, loads barrels of defoliant onto waiting planes, thrills to the tug of life captured on his line. He admires her entering his room, thrills to the tug of life captured on his line, makes her smile despite the blood count. He wires buildings for machines he doesn't use, makes her smile despite the blood count, hoists a purring cat up to his shoulder. He complains about veggies and bitter herbal tea, hoists a purring cat to his shoulder, makes it to the waiting car, leaning on a friend. He wastes away as the war finally takes him. Makes it to the waiting car, leaning on a friend. Finally gets a boat of his own. He confounds time with her ferocious love. Finally gets a boat of his own, slipping away on the early tide. He grins, suspended in the photo frame, slipping away on the early tide, fortifying parties with his infectious smile. This next poem is called Water is Body. It's inspired by a poem called The First Water is the Body by Natalie Diaz in Postcolonial Love Poem. It's a fabulous book. She won the Pulitzer Prize with it, and she's an inspiring poet. Water is body. You say we carry the river, its body of water, in our body. Body and water are the same. Water is body, energy, medicine, prayer. I am the water flowing in the river, yes, and the ocean and the stream. The nectar on the hummingbird's tongue, the breaking water of birth. Tears flowing down my lover's cheeks as she grieves all the deaths that have crashed upon her shore. I am the gurgling forest brook, ageless reminder that time is not real. Death is for the living. The falling, parted, open, endless water. I am urine flowing unbidden into mother's chair cushion as she reminisces about wading in the creeks of her childhood, where woodland fairies said she would be safe. I am the water missing from barren farmland, the cleansing rain and flooding torrent, the sacred water of new life and impending passage. I am the water leaking through a rented roof, corroding walls where cabinets sag and roaches nest. I am the spittle in the tyrant's fulmination, poison flowing in a grade school fountain, water rising as mist from a still dawn pond, reflecting sentinel pines, inviting the naked to enter. I fill thirsty dancers and rip babies from loving arms, carry us downstream into the mysteries of stardust and souls, where we are all the water, all sisters and brothers, one body, all one. And the final poem that I'll do in this segment is inspired by travel to Puerto Rico with my friend and colleague Luz Lopez, who is here, professor extraordinaire at Boston University School of Social Work. And she leads trips, study and service trips with students to her homeland, and I've been fortunate to accompany her on a couple of those. This poem is called The Winds of El Morro. And El Morro is a castle built starting in the 15th century overlooking the Atlantic and San Juan Harbor. And most of us approach El Morro from the city side, and there are very large, expansive lawns leading to the castle. And then you can go down into the castle for a tour. It's little known, I think, that there is a path that if you know how to get down to it, you can actually walk at the base of the cliff, right along the water. And El Morro is set high on a cliff. And I took that walk. I kind of happed upon that walk and was surprised at what I found on the backside of the cliff. Those lawns are known as a wonderful place to fly kites. The winds of El Morro. Kites litter the cliffs of El Morro, hanging from trees facing the sea. Children's dreams soared on the wind, but were dashed here, falling to rest where feral cats wander and strings dangle from foreboding walls built for conquistadors by enslaved Tainos. Vejante dances here. Iguana roams. Coqui sings. Courage courses through Borinquen veins. Girls stand between their mothers and knife-wielding men. Abuelas break locks and chains to occupy schools and cook for bedridden neighbors. Evening light is soft on the cliffs of El Morro. Shadows lengthen. Warm waters whisper of howling winds and the uncounted dead. The governor raises his glass in La Fortaleza, concerned only with the needs of his puppeteer. An ash on the wind, a bitter taste on history's tongue. Butterflies dance among flamboyant trees. Mariposa, symbol of transformation, of all things possible, solidarity after chaos, the power of community, the one who conquers fear, the loving gaze, the nod, the decision to continue. The winds of El Morro carry kites through curtains of heat, up toward the sun who pours sweat on the brow of the gardener, the security guard, the fruit seller, the housekeeper, the bridge builder, the dancers, smooth as flan, and children with hands proudly on the strings, dreams ever soaring. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. So let's take a break, 10 or 15 minutes. I'll come back and do another set of them. Thank you. Thank you.
Last time you'll hear from me tonight, but if we could please take our seats again. Dad will start reading here for the second half of the program shortly. Thank you again.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you all. I was just talking to Charlie Franish, who's a activist here in town, and he said, it's all about building community, and it's just a perfect way to put it. And this is a remarkable group of people. I go back 40-odd years, and then some with some of you. So John and I knew each other in high school back in Illinois. John and Sue and Sally and I worked at the same place, Interfaith Young Adult Ministries that George Whitehouse ran back in the early 70s. Thank you for giving me my start in Boston. The slide that I just switched to is the confluence of the Colorado and Green Rivers, seen from an overlook that one has to hike 10 miles to over desert and slick rock. And that was a hike that I wanted very much to take, and finally was able to do it. And it's just a very sheer precipice at the end of the trail. The confluence of those rivers gave inspiration for the title of the book. And of course, confluence is a metaphor for connection that runs all through the book in various ways. So this poem is called Confluence Overlook. I walk through a haunted valley of sentinel needles. Ancients surround me, their faces clear in glowing sandstone, profiles chiseled in burgundy shale.
voices carrying over slick rock that never dies, just crumbles to give life to sage and juniper, indigo columbine, waving fields of grass. Beyond this precipice where the trail ends, where a dream beckons, a staring lizard knows heaven's conceit. Life is shared in time where the rivers meet. And this is a poem from the same trip. Troubles. Delfrid knows whose life is marked by the white cross with plastic flowers at the side of the canyon road. It was his cousin. It happens, he says, as if driving off the road was part of the natural order. Delfrid needs a ride to his uncle's ranch up near Spider Rock because his girlfriend is mad at him. She refused to pick him up at the trailhead after his overnight in the Canyon Valley. I went down to take care of my grandmother's sheep, he says, but she thinks I went down to meet another girl. We've been together 5 years, he says, but we have our troubles. Delfrid declines an offer of trail mix in favor of more water. His thirst runs deep. It happens. On my way to work at DPH, I walked down the hill on Beacon Street past a Department of Mental Health funded group home every morning for 7 years. And this poem is called Group Home. Sitting on a porch step, blinking in the morning sun, cigarette smoldering in your relaxed hand, you watch my approach, quick-paced briefcaser hurrying for the train. How's Robin? You ask naturally, as if we were old friends, as if I knew who you were talking about, as if you knew. Good, I reply pleasantly, good. Perhaps this makes me Batman. Perhaps I am the herald of spring. Your housemates sit behind you in shadow, one rocking silently, one staring ahead, steeped in their own realities. But mine's easier to fathom than the convoluted passions of warmongers and men who tweak laws to better plunder and pollute, as if their daughters and sons with ours were spinning ahead into different histories, as if we lived beneath different suns. I've been an activist all my life. And that started literally in my teens. And I think I was 16. We went to downtown Chicago for civil rights rallies. I got to hear the very young Jesse Jackson. What time is it? It's nation time. What time is it? It's nation time. My cousin, the daughter of a full colonel in the United States Marine Corps, who served as one of the original frogmen, the precursors of the Navy SEALs in World War II, and then in Korea, and then in Vietnam. How I saved my cousin from a life of infamy. My mother says my cousin blames me for being denied CIA employment. Who knew when I wrote that letter to Nixon, quoting Masters of War, bringing a Secret Service agent to my door? When we marched with the Red Squad clinging to streetlight poles, heaving heavy cameras. When we swallowed tear gas on the Capitol lawn, sang Handel from a city jail cell. Who knew the fate from which my cousin escaped, if it's true what my mother says? 9/11 Redux. In his final moments, those soulful eyes were startled and angry. No turban on his head, no gun in his hand. I silenced him at point blank with his wife screaming in the rubble. Clear shots to the head and heart. We could have taken him alive, but we carried out the mission, arriving with body bags, not handcuffs. They cheered us in the streets, passions hot for revenge served cold, justice delivered for the perfect headline. It's always been this way somewhere, eye for an eye, chopped heads by the desert highway, Antoinette at the guillotine, picnic lynchings on the village square. This is written in the style of John Beecher, who's a poet that John Gibbons and I heard way back in the 70s at a General Assembly of the Unitarian Universalist Association. He was from Pittsburgh, and he wrote of working people and working struggles. So this poem is called A View from the Lock House. And it's a restaurant now along the banks of the Ohio River, just west of Pittsburgh, in an actual lock house that was used for navigational purposes on the river. View from the lock house. A photographer's dream of smokestacks and rusted trellises, pipes and parapets, tanks and tracks, hulks above the swollen river, under a leaden sky. Mausoleum for 3 consumed in the explosion that's proving messy for regulators, a liability for shareholders who will never meet the widows or the families of 700 soon to lose their jobs as the operation moves south. Cheaper to rebuild than repair. And this poem takes its name from a building in Nubian Square, a community center in Roxbury called Hibernian Hall, where I did some relief work after one of the major earthquakes in Haiti. Hibernian Hall. Babies lying dead in the street, she said, like fish washed up on shore. The wounded waiting without strength to cry. Hundreds by the thousands. So we put our backs into it as one, sorting all this clothing, imagining who used to wear this skirt, this shirt, this pair of pants, imagining who will open this box, passed down a human chain to waiting truck, then boat or plane. Our hearts full of the prayerful songs they're singing, even in the face of death, even as the shouting stops from underneath the rubble again. Music coursing through our grunts and laughs, the fierce pace of our labor, done because we want to, knowing that community is power, desperate to help somehow. The inscription of the book is taken from the words of a song, a poem by Bernice Johnson Reagan, who was an extraordinary singer, founder of Sweet Honey in the Rock, a singer who came out of the Albany, Georgia campaign in the civil rights movement. And she wrote a song, set some words of Ella Baker's to music, We Who Believe. And it's an amazing song. Ella is an inspiration to many of us in this room. We who believe. Save us from precious do this, do that poems. Holier than thou directives on how to breathe the sunlight, drink the stardust, be the ripe tomato. I want to be one in the number, listening, learning, Love in action, chisels and knives sharp until the end. For my students, one of whom is here. Thank you, Sarah. I would tell you love and justice are inseparable. Change usually comes too slowly. I am still learning, striving like you to understand and make my place. The gap of a generation is like a meteor tail, a beaver slap on water, less than the blink of a wary eye. I would say our choices matter. Pay attention to lichen, gently eating rock and making way for forests. Beware those who encourage dismissive judgment, who would fashion you in their own image, who believe they have the answers to questions you must answer with loving work, relation, and creation over time in community on your own. There are several of you, and maybe all of you, in this poem that I'm about to read. It's called Winter Solstice. I wrote it on a winter solstice, and I was thinking of Mel King and some of you. The late, great Mel King, an inspiration, again, to many of us in this room. The reference to him is not explicit, but he's here. I should be sleeping, though at this hour my grandfather would have been hard at work delivering milk in the dark Minnesota winter. Silver light of the settling moon bathing vacant streets with the glow of memory, hard truths, distant dreams, awaiting dawn's flood of pumpkin, mustard, and coral, glad for the sun to begin its shortest arc of the year. At the dinner table, he blew air into his thumb, inflating his biceps as we laughed and pleaded, "Do it again." Grandmom smiling as he continued, teasing into forever, where they live now, out of touch after all these years, inhabiting the realm of gratitude, longing, and regret, denizens of dreams from which I wake to find you. I marvel at the distance between us, how long we have been out of touch, remembering work that brought us together, comings and goings through the years, our orbits and elliptical paths across chasms of time and space. So many journeys side by side, rolling up our sleeves to get the jobs done, tasks, missions, struggles, achievements of lifetimes, transformations now celebrated or forgotten as new generations claim the day. I wonder at my ignorance about particle physics, monarch migrations, schooling fishes, gravity and changing currents of ocean and air. How the giant upon whose shoulders we stand stoops under the weight of years. How acorns and pine cones settle and grow. How one may calculate the precise moment when Earth's axis tilts furthest from the sun, turning at the edge of hope, as memory releases the dead and love propels the living to reach out, to honor and praise, to say thank you, I miss you, hoping our orbits intersect again before we join the remembered ones. And I'll wrap up and return to home. Anniversary. When fire has claimed the land, all that it can. When dams are belatedly destroyed, rivers drained and fish depleted. Even then, at dawn, Earth's orchestra will stir. Music will rise as the shameless eastern sky parades its glory. Wind will rustle leaves. Newborn babes will cry for the departed. The cardinal will call. The morning dove will answer. After the final breath is taken, whale song, mystery, life dancing in memory's arms, love unbound from time. You connect us all like aspen roots on a golden hillside, each rippling fin and rustling feather. You, the glow of a conch shell illuminated by morning sun, the space between the letters of all the words in every book imagined. You, a chord sounding after the bell is still, who claims the broken spirit and nourishes. You, with laughing eyes and tingling tongue, who goes about the business of caring without care or calculation. Like the sun and the tides, a monarch wing unfolding, a river of raindrops mixed with tears. The heart of the holy living in and through you, holding me. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Bravo!
Thanks. Thank you for coming. It's a real pleasure. Thank you.